I'm Steven, and I've failed more than anybody you know. I have a son with Down syndrome. I have a son with autism. At 33, I became the vice president for a billion-dollar company. I made a lot of money. But at the height of my career, I became a full-blown meth addict. I lost everything. I'm homeless on the streets right now, but determined to rebuild. All I want to do is use my life to help others. This is the greatest success story of all time unfolding right here.
I'm getting fat. My sweatshirt's too tight. Oh, beautiful day. I was just thinking this morning and asking myself, why did I get sober? And I don't know if I understand that fully, but I've given it a fair amount of thought. And man, I can just tell you, I feel so foggy. My brain can't even think. I can't think worth crap anymore right now, at least. I'm just so tired. So I think I'm gonna walk over to a coffee shop and get some coffee. And maybe that will help a little bit. I guess what I would say real quick is my life started, I wouldn't just say falling apart, but to say that judgment was coming on me in everything that I did would be an understatement. Everything I did, everywhere I went, every situation that I was in, not only did it not work out in my favor, but it was like everything started having the worst possible outcome. And it was beating me down unbelievably hard. And I've been homeless ever since I crashed my coach that I was traveling with, and I was renovating at the same time, which is awesome. Well, it was awesome. I'll have to do some video about that later, but just sneak peek, like I got this coach. It was like $1.5 million when it was new, and I bought it from Steve Stevens, who's Billy Idol's guitarist, and I flew out to Scottsdale, Arizona to buy it, and I was renovating this whole thing and living in it, and I'll have to do a video on that later. But I crashed it. It's gone. Well, it's not gone, but it's crashed, and I have nowhere to live. So that's kind of where it started. And then hookers stole my French bulldog, and then somebody else came and stole like all my stuff that was parked at my storage yard where the bus was. Just robbed me blind. I had no money. It just literally, my only mode of transportation got stolen. It was crazy. And so that's kind of what happened. It was like life just beat me down to the ground. And then I decided that that was enough. I called Uncle and got sober. So those are the events that happened. But what happened in my heart is way more complex and much more meaningful. So I just found the street. I'm gonna get some coffee. I'll be right back. Too tight. got a really big head. And these videos, they ain't gonna be perfect. They're gonna be perfect enough. Perfect enough. That's it. And that doesn't mean they're gonna be very good at all. But anyways, what was I saying? My heart. What changed in my heart? What changes, I think, with anybody who is getting sober or needs to get sober or gets sober, anybody who gets sober, I think for the long term, I think what has to happen is a fundamental change in what you believe, in your heart, in your very core. It's a shift that occurs. Like, I used to believe something was true. With all of my being, I believed it was true. That just wasn't so. So for me, when I got sober, I didn't think a whole lot about this. It just happened to me. Like, all these bad things happened. I was put in a place and I was like, I just gave up. I just gave up. That's how I got sober. I just gave up. I couldn't freaking do it anymore. I'm like, I'm done. I'm going to sleep for the next 2 weeks. Period. That's it. I got nothing left. And that's what I did. I picked up the Bible and I read the Bible front to back in about 2.5 months. It's basically all I did. I was just fascinated by it. And it's really hard to read, and I don't know if I recommend that to everybody. Side note, you know it's going to be a really good day? Like, I always know it's going to be a really good day when... Is that backwards? Anyway, when they spell my name correctly with the PH. That takes talent. That takes talent, and that's when you know you're in good hands throughout the day. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say. ADD Steven, refocus. Oh, so I read through the Bible in about 2.5 months, and it was extremely fascinating to me. And there was a part that I keep thinking back on. It's in Ecclesiastes. And the author of Ecclesiastes was King Solomon. King Solomon was David's son. King David's son. Way back in, I don't know when it was, probably 900 BC. And King David is David and Goliath. David. That's the same David. So David was loved by God. David's son, Solomon, asked for wisdom, and he was the wisest man who had ever lived and who ever will live, I believe. I don't know about the second part of that, but he definitely was the wisest man who had ever lived. He talks about all these things in life, and it's crazy because he says, I had everything. Like, people were bringing him gold. I did the math on it. He had like 600,000 pounds of gold. I didn't do the math on the dollar value of that, but I did the math on the actual pounds of it. It was like 600,000 pounds of gold that he accumulated through various ways. And basically, people were bringing it to him just to hear him talk. And the Queen of Sheba came up from wherever in Africa she was, and says, I have to see this. I hear stories about your great wisdom and all the greatness and the grandness that's going on around here. And now that I've seen it, she says, it's even greater than I ever expected, that I could ever imagine. She said, how can you not be successful with the words that you're speaking, the wisdom that just comes out of your mouth, that just your slaves and your servants hear coming off of your lips. Like, how blessed are they? How wise is everybody who's around you? And it just reminded me of a corporate environment. When you win in a corporate environment, when you have good leaders in a corporate environment, dude, you kill it. You kill it. Everybody's on the same freaking page, and everybody is marching to the same beat of the drum, and crazy things happen. So I can just imagine that being my experience. I've experienced that in my past, and I can just envision this synergy around King Solomon, right? And so he writes this book talking about his wisdom and the folly. And he was like the richest guy ever. And he says, there is nothing that I don't have. He had like 1,000 concubines, which concubines, like, you know, he was popular, dude. He was popular. And so he says, I denied my flesh nothing. I fully indulged in anything and everything that my heart desires, and nothing was beyond my means. So here's a guy who is very wise, and he gets to test the world. And this is what I'm thinking as I'm reading it. It's like he gets to test the world, and he comes to a lot of conclusions. But the ones that really hit me was comfort. I don't know if he actually says comfort, but comfort and pleasure. And that's what in my core I thought I was after. If you really boil it all down, if you really boil it all down, comfort and pleasure was what I was after, and power and all of the same sick things that everybody else is after. Because if you've got money, you can do whatever you want whenever you want to do it, right? If you've got comfort, if you've got, you want to be comfortable at home, you want to be happily married and comfortable with your spouse, like, you want comfort, you want to feel secure and comfort, and then you want to feel pleasure. You want to be able to feel pleasure. And that's what life's about, right? That's what I thought. Meth lets you just hit the pleasure button. You just keep hitting the pleasure button. And that's why you see all these people that are just, their lives just spiral downhill, like mine just kept spiraling. I didn't care because I had a pleasure button, and I could keep hitting my pleasure button as often as I wanted to. And it was great. It was great. But see, what I slowly started to realize is that, like, God created the world for entertainment, kinda, right? And then sin entered the world, and it corrupted everything. And so now we have this weird relationship between judgment and pleasure. And what's another word for pleasure that I'm thinking of? Like, I'll think of it later. But basically pleasure, right? We have this weird relationship between judgment and pleasure. And it's constantly fighting over, like, our core, our souls, and we have a real problem with it. Pleasure is what you're after, but it's not the whole story, and that's why we need God. And think of it this way. Think of the best boss that you've ever had. Think of your best boss. Now I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to guess. It's not the guy or gal who was your buddy that let you do whatever you wanted to do, show up whenever you wanted to show up, just really cool. Really cool. Just, man, I got a hangover and my boss is awesome. And like, don't worry, I'll just call in sick. Or I'll just show up tore up and nothing will happen. Like, that's who we think we like in the moment, but that's not our best boss at all. That's like our worst boss. Who's the best boss that you ever have? It's the boss that saw something in you that you didn't and couldn't see in yourself, and they freaking made it their mission to pull it out of you. And they made you get in front of people and speak when you hated doing it. And they pushed you to accomplish a project that was just unrealistic and impossible. They pushed you to your breaking point and you hated their guts. That's the best boss you've ever had. Because you look back and you say, wow, I accomplished something that was hard, that I wouldn't have accomplished any other way. And you look back, and that is the pleasure and the satisfaction that our hearts are after. That type doesn't come any other way. You can't take a shortcut. You can't take a shortcut to get that kind of pleasure. And that's what the world's filled with. That's why we have addictions. And by the way, meth addiction, alcohol addiction, food addiction, any kind of addiction, any kind of sin is exactly the same thing. We're not dealing with anything different. No, everybody's dealing with the same freaking thing. That's the crazy part about it. Wake up. Wake up. There's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. You have to do the work. And you can't just do the work and know that it's going to turn out all right. You've got to go through the pain. You've got to go through the doubt. Like yesterday, when I posted my first freaking video to YouTube, I was like in tears, dude. What the frick am I doing? What am I doing? I'm an idiot. I'm a freaking idiot. But you know what? That is what I mean. If I knew that this was going to be some wild success and people would love it, it wouldn't be worth anything. That's the conundrum of life, isn't it? Unfreaking believable. So that's what it is. So that's what I realized in my core, and that's why I'm sober. I'm not after comfort and pleasure. I'm not after comfort and pleasure at all. That's not what I want. That's what I think I want, but that's not what I want. Because if you keep hitting the pleasure button, judgment comes to fill, to offset the balance. And you've got to get it the right way. And so that's another thing that I realized when I was reading the Bible. When I started reading it, I got about, I don't remember, 500 pages in. I'm not sure which book it was. Probably somewhere in Samuel or Kings. I don't know. And I look back and I'm like, dude, here's the weird thing. Satan is never mentioned once until like page 500, I think, in my Bible. He's never mentioned once. Not one time. It's like, what? How's that possible? Like 1,000 years have gone by. Never once. But what keeps coming up is Baal. Baal. And these idols that people keep making, these idols. And I keep thinking to myself, what's that about? What is that about? We don't have idols these days. And these people were very, like, it was leading them astray. Like, Moses went up on the mountain for 40 days. And then Aaron, his buddy, if you've ever seen Prince of Egypt, you know who I'm talking about. Aaron, like, he's helping them cast freaking idols out of gold in the fire. Like, Moses came down 40 days later. God had just led the disciple, like all of his Israel, like all of his people out of Egypt. They've been enslaved for 400 years. He miraculously parts the sea. He sends all the plagues on Egypt. And in 40 days, they're making an idol, dude. In 40 days, they're like, oh, God hasn't been around here. Moses, I don't know where he's at. We better make an idol to bow down to. It's like you read that and you're like, what is that about? What is that about? And it dawns on me, dude. It's Baal, it's the Ashtaroth or whatever the heck you call it. But if you think about it, if you look at it, because I looked into it, and it's like, it's the god of like the storms or the rain, the god of fertility. And at that time it was like your offspring was everything. What are these people doing, and why are they so drawn to bowing down to these idols? And what it is it's a shortcut. These people, God's not around. I gotta admit, he seemed pretty aloof back then. Like, didn't come around a whole lot. Like, hey, I'm going to let you guys be in slavery for 400 years, and then I'm going to come back and see what you're up to, and maybe I'll let you out. He seems a little bit of aloof. But anyways, it comes back to shortcuts. We have needs in our life, and we keep trying to take the shortcut. And that's what's throwing us into addiction. It's no different than what people have been dealing with for 4,000 years or whatever it is. We're trying to take a shortcut, and we're trying to do it without God, and we can't. And that's what I realized, and that's how I got sober. It's no more complicated than that. I'm not after comfort and pleasure. I'm after going out and making a freaking difference in this world. I want to do something that freaking matters, so I'm doing this. And I'm taking videos as I try to fumble my way out of homelessness, as I try to figure out life. I'm just going to video it because maybe it'll help somebody else. So, anyways, that was on my mind this morning. Feeling a little better after having some coffee in me. That's another thing. You'll never find a meth addict at a coffee shop, dude. Never. But as soon as you stop, that's a tip right there. That's how you can tell. Is he really not doing meth anymore, or is he doing meth? This is how you tell. If they have a coffee cup in their hand, they're sober. If they do not have a coffee cup in their hand, there's cause for question. Anyways, that's all I got. I'm done today. I'm freaking done. I'm gonna go figure out something else. Bye.